Spartan Total Warrior is one of those games that feels like it should be easier to explain than it is. On paper, it's a third-person action game where you play as a Spartan fighting back against the Roman Empire. In practice, it is a completely ridiculous mixture of Greek mythology, Roman imperialism, undead soldiers, living statues, and ancient superweapons. And I love it. It's messy, it's clunky, it's very mid-2000s, and it's been locked away in the intellectual property vault for far too long. So yes, before we go any further, on behalf of the 7 people who remember this game, free Spartan Total Warrior. Remaster it, re-release it, port it to PC as soon as possible. Because beneath all of the chaos, Spartan Total Warrior is fascinating. It's not just a forgotten action game overshadowed by a competitor that released earlier that same year, it's Creative Assembly taking the battlefield spectacle they were known for and asking, what if instead of commanding the army, you were one unbelievably angry man standing in the middle of it? So today I want to talk about what Spartan Total Warrior actually was, why it worked better than it probably should have, and why it's been stuck in my brain all these years. So Spartan Total Warrior is a third-person action game where you play as a Spartan warrior creatively named the Spartan. Honestly, between this and Halo, my early gaming years were filled with playing a Spartan in some way or another. The setup is simple. The year is supposedly 300 BC, Rome is invading Greece, Sparta is under siege, and you are but one man in an army of defenders standing between the Roman Empire and total conquest. At face value, it sounds vaguely historical, for about 4 seconds, before the game throws in gods, monsters, undead soldiers, magic weapons, and a bunch of other things that would have really upset my Latin teacher at school. Yes, I studied Latin, he also taught me ancient Greek, and no, my school wasn't private. Let's just move on. The important thing is, if you had asked an 8-year-old me what sort of game he wanted to play, it probably would have been a mashup of ancient Greek and Roman history with some mythology thrown in there. What's interesting about Spartan Total Warrior is that it has the DNA of a Total War game, but the gameplay is nothing like it. It's not in the history or even the mechanics, it's in the scale. And that's a great idea for an action game. Which brings us to Creative Assembly. Creative Assembly is one of those studios with a very specific identity. You hear the name and you immediately think of Total War. Huge armies, historical campaigns, hundreds of tiny wee guys marching into each other until your PC sounds like it's about to take off. They built their reputation on scale. Rome Total War, Medieval, Pharaoh, Shogun, Thrones of Britannia, Warhammer, all games about moving armies around a map, managing cities, starting wars you can't afford, and cheesing people with cavalry and archers. So naturally, in 2005, Creative Assembly decided to take all of that spectacle and make something completely different. And I think it's one of the strangest, coolest, and most underappreciated things Creative Assembly has ever made. Spartan Total Warrior wasn't made for PC, and it wasn't trying to be Total War on console. It was something else entirely. My introduction to Spartan Total Warrior came from playing it at a friend's house. He had a bedroom that I was pretty jealous of. He had a TV in his room, a PS2, a literal mountain of games, and a PC as well. From those who grew up in early 2000s Scotland, all I need to add to this is that his family had Sky on the telly. They were truly part of the 1%. We mostly sat next to each other, one of us on the PS2 and the other on the PC, occasionally swapping between Spartan Total Warrior and the best strategy game of all time, Empire Earth. And this is how Spartan Total Warrior lodged itself into my brain. Not because I was old enough to buy it, not because I'd seen trailers or any marketing for it, but because I'd picked it out of my mate's insane amount of game cases. And that's all before I even knew it was a spin-off of the massive Total War franchise. So going back to it now is strange, because the memory I had of it was mostly just a feeling. I remember the scale, the chaos, the carving through crowds while the screen was filled with soldiers, explosions and monsters. What I didn't remember was just how quickly it gets there. Because after playing through the game again, one of the things that impressed me most about Spartan Total Warrior is how quickly it establishes its premise. And by that I mean just how batshit it is. The game opens on Sparta being attacked by the Roman Empire. There's no calm before the storm, there's no dithering around or a long tutorial about how buttons work. It is straight into the action.
To battle!
You're immediately thrust into defending a wall from siege towers, and the game establishes its scale by having a huge group of Spartans getting absolutely nuked by a catapult. The combat's pretty simple, but it does the job. You have a quick attack aimed at a single enemy, and a radial attack for swinging into groups. You can also block, shield bash individual soldiers, or you can shield bash a whole bunch of them at once. It's basic, but serviceable, and once you build up enough Spartan rage, you can unleash a heavier attack that does some serious damage to tougher enemies, or can slaughter a whole crowd of smaller ones. And I do mean slaughter. The game doesn't pull any punches, with just comical amounts of blood and decapitations. It establishes the rhythm quickly. You'll often find yourself battling big enemies or ripping and tearing through entire formations. And it's not long before our first main objective appears, escorting sappers to destroy siege towers.
Cover me while I get this bomb to the tower!
Now, the idea of heavy explosives in 300 BC is just very funny to me, and starting the game with King Leonidas of Sparta asking you to protect the lads with the ancient C4 is an incredible choice. Once that's done, we head to defend a gate, and I'm guessing this was the way the game handled the number of units on the battlefield at any given time, but friendly Spartans line up behind this gate and you have to pull a lever to let them out. It's probably the most inefficient way to defend a city, but there's something quite fun and deliberate about it. And then, before the first mission is even over, the game wheels out Talos, the bronze statue that the Romans have somehow brought to life to destroy the city. There was never a pretense to drop in the first place, but here the game firmly plants the flag that it is not here to be subtle in any way. You pour hot oil on the attackers below and you launch catapults at Talos, and once he's dealt with, you might expect the game to relax and catch its breath after its opening. It does not. The second level has you sneaking into the Roman camp outside Sparta, and by sneaking in we mean walking straight towards the enemy base with your nipples out.
You do realize this is crazy.
Your companion's a guy called Castor, and he can apparently afford armour. The second level reduces the scale of the battlefield, but only really on your side. There's still hundreds of Romans to kill, but this time it's mostly you and Castor battling your way through the camp. The game also gets quite creative with objectives. You're pushing deeper into enemy territory, and it gives you optional objectives to destroy siege weapons and poison the water supply. Hey, it's 300 BC, there's no goddess of the Geneva Convention to worry about. Slaughter your way through the camp, including dodging fully automatic ballistas, and you'll get your second weapon, the Blades of Athena.
Forged in the furnace of Hephaestus. Lost during the Trojan War. Looted from the temple in Athens by the Empire.
And these go hard. The rage attack zips you through a bunch of enemies at once, and it's just always a good time. You also meet Electra, the warrior princess of the Amazons, which only slightly helps balance out the sausage fest. Thank God she's not a playable character, or some people might have had an aneurysm.
There she is, get her!
The level ends with you freeing and escorting a bunch of prisoners out of the Roman camp before you have to cover their escape while engineers rig a bridge to explode. And the best part is you get to use ballistas with explosive tipped arrows. Just fantastic game design choices here. I love it. I do think there's something to be said about the variety of objectives over the course of the first two levels. It's chaotic battlefield fun, but it has a lot of mini objectives encompassed in the core of its gameplay. Protect the sappers, defend the gate, call for reinforcements, escort the captives, shoot the catapults, hold off hordes of Romans while a bridge detonates. It's pretty solid variety for a game from 2005. Up next, The Last Stand of Act 1. And we're back to doing what the game does best. Two huge armies smashing into each other. Oh, and the Romans have harnessed the power of Medusa into an orbital beam which turns everyone to stone. The mission has you fighting your way across the battlefield, taking out centurions, blowing up archer towers, and pushing through Roman ambushes before finally reaching Crassus, Act 1's main antagonist, who also effectively serves as our first proper human boss battle. There's a wee bit of friction here because one-on-one boss battles don't always feel like a natural fit for a game built around fighting hordes. But what I like about this fight is that it's not actually a straight up duel. Spartans and Romans are fighting all around you, and Medusa's beam is still carving chunks out the battlefield, so you have to keep the pressure on him while also avoiding the orbital death laser. This fight is pretty representative of the strongest illusion that Spartan Total Warrior pulls off. And it might be a bit unfair to call it an illusion. The game was built to have huge numbers of enemies and allies fighting each other, even when the player wasn't directly involved. It doesn't just freeze the moment you turn away. If you stare closely, you can still see the seams, but in motion, it all still works. The game is very good at giving the impression of a massive battle. There are bodies everywhere, allies charging forward, explosions and arrows, and the game subtly reinforces your allied soldiers through the general noise of battle. The fight itself here is not technically particularly amazing, but the framing is. You kill Crassus and you pick up the Medusa shield, which grants you the ultimate ability of turning enemies to stone. And with the level complete, Act 1 comes to an end. At this point, Spartan Totem Warrior has more or less shown us its full pitch, so going into Act 2, I don't think I need to go level by level in the same amount of detail. We're no longer just defending Sparta, we're moving through different locations, fighting different factions, picking up new weapons, and getting a better sense of just how mental this world is. The first big change is the Barbarians, who are a refreshing change of pace. Up until now, the Romans have been the main enemy type. Shields, formations, siege weapons, imperialism, all fairly straightforward. The Barbarians are more of a rabble, and while the combat doesn't really change, the different enemy types give us a bit more texture. They start off simple enough with clubs and some heavy axes, but they also have these gigantes who all seem modelled after Bane. This act also sets in the main cast a bit more. We have Castor, his brother Pollux, and Electra who are part of the group. After we're ambushed by Barbarians, we do exactly what you'd expect.
Are we the baddies?
We do, however, free prisoners they've taken from a nearby village, and the Spartan and Electra stay to defend it from... Wait, is that fucking Beowulf? Beowulf is the leader of the Barbarians, because at this point, why the hell not? He challenges the village to send out their best warrior and is deeply unimpressed when we turn up, so he makes us fight his gang of berserkers instead. Electra starts to warn me to stay away from the fire as it'll kill me if I touch it, so naturally I touch it and die instantly. We head back into the village, and I always remember this fight being a bit mental, as hundreds of bandits descend into the village from different entrances and you need to defend the village's grain stores. It's just a hectic run from one to the other, occasionally ringing a bell to make reinforcements run between them, and then just polishing off the bandits that are left. And now we take the fight to Beowulf. The Spartans charge up the hill where the magic fire forms a boss arena. Beowulf has a hammer called Deathbiter forged in the fires of Jotunheim, so we're just getting all of the mythology. And we got it years before the God of War reboot. I start this boss fight with barely any health, and Beowulf is absolutely relentless. If you're looking for a large man with stamina, sorry, I'm spoken for, but Beowulf is definitely available. He calls in berserkers, he throws fireballs at you, and he constantly regains his ultimate ability after only a really brief cooldown, so you can just use it over and over again. It's a frustrating fight, but we eventually get the better of him and steal his hammer. The next few levels take place in the ruined city of Troy, which makes Act 2 feel like we're doing a ancient history Mediterranean tour at breakneck speed. And unlike every level so far, we start this one completely alone. We're also introduced to Praetorian Guards and their heavy unit, the Carnifex. These are much tougher compared to the regular legionaries, and they're coloured purple. The colour of sin. We activate a giant furnace and encounter our next big bad antagonist, alias Sejanus, who wouldn't look out of place as a Warhammer 40k Inquisitor. Oh, and he's also a necromancer. Sejanus raises a bunch of zombies to fight you, and this is where Troy starts getting interesting. The next area is home to the Trojan horse, and there's a genuinely insane amount of Romans to fight here. I lit a bomb hoping that it would thin the crowd, only for it to destroy the wooden horse and unleash a whole bunch of skeleton warriors, who immediately start fighting the Roman soldiers beside them. And that's another thing that felt really impressive at the time, opposing enemy factions fighting each other. Some games take the wrong approach to this and just have both sides drop what they're doing to gang up on the player whenever they walk into view. Spartan Totem Warrior walks this line really well. The level ends in the Tomb of Achilles, where Sejanus conjures your evil twin, who wields the aptly named Flaming Spear of Achilles. I think the devs knew there was a limit to fighting yourself in a game like this. The arena spawns floating health and spirit orbs, so all you really need to do is beat him to them and then use your ultimate ability. That's how I cheesed it back then, and that's how I'll cheese it now. Afterwards we get the Spear of Achilles and we fight our way out of the ruins. But before we leave, Troy has one last challenge, the Hydra. This is the shortest level in the game and is a really cool fight. Chop off the heads and then use fire arrows to take them out. Honestly, it's a nice bit of respite before the upcoming hell. Sejanus informs the gang that Sparta has fallen in their absence, so they head to Athens to find help. The last level of Act 2 is a level I both respect and utterly despise compared to the rest of the game. At face value, it's pretty simple. You're in Athens and the Romans have started their occupation of the city. In practice, it is painstakingly difficult compared to pretty much anything the game has thrown at you so far. The whole level revolves around Archimedes. He looks like this. Utterly ridiculous. All the levels so far have actually been fairly linear, but this one has you running around the streets of Athens as they loop around and connect back into each other. It's less battlefield destruction and more stone jungle with ramps that'll kill you if you jump off them. You start with Archimedes saying he's heard that the Romans plan to assassinate him in the square today, and apparently he just couldn't stay at home, so you have to run around exploring balconies and taking out potential assassins while he makes his speech. Then you're tasked with finding the local Spartans who've just been chilling in the pub this entire time, and you need to fend off groups of enemies trying to reach the square where Archimedes is. Any enemy soldier getting into that square is an instant fail. After that, Roman spies disguised as Athenians are running towards their safe houses, which turns the level into this frantic hell of spinning plates. They luckily die in only one hit, but the streets are a winding mess, and the further you progress, they start being escorted by these ninja soldiers. And the thing is, you take a battering because you're prioritising the objectives that can just completely fail you if you're not absolutely locked in. After that's done, you get a breather and recover a little bit before heading back. And then you have to escort fucking Archimedes. And I would rather shit in my hands and clap than do this part of the mission. Archimedes has the self-preservation instincts of a suicide bomber. He runs through the streets, flailing like an idiot, setting off every Roman in a 10-mile radius while you have to fight off everyone. These aren't just basic legionaries, they're heavy units, they're centurions, praetorian guards, and the ninjas. I failed this section so many times, and instead of giving me a checkpoint as the escort objective starts, the game puts me back at the end of the previous objective. So every time I fail, I have to run across Athens first before I can retry the bit that I actually died on. That old school checkpoint is irritating enough by itself, but it's made worse by another serious design issue. Health. You heal by using these green shrines and they break when you max them out, so there's only so much health available in any given level. And it's so incredibly scarce in this one. It makes the last section an absolute nightmare. Archimedes flees to a safe house where Romans are actually lying in wait. He then asks for directions and is sent to a street with a Roman patrol. One part of the level has you sneaking past the Roman patrol, only for him to walk into another one, which also triggers the group you sneaked past. And the level ends with this mad chase to the final objective where Archimedes runs into the house, shuts the door, and then tells you to kill everyone. So I'm basically having to do this whole section hitless. And look, I do respect the variety of objectives the level has, and if you can't complete it because there's no health left at the end, you could argue it encourages restarting and mastering the earlier sections. I sort of respect this level, but I just don't respect fucking Archimedes. Right, so if the last mission was about protecting Athens, Act 3 is about inspiring a revolution and taking the fight straight to the heart of the Roman Empire.
The Colosseum.
The game starts sprinting towards the finish line here. The scale is still there, the set pieces are still ridiculous, but you can feel it trying not to overstay its welcome. We're back in Athens at night, doing odd jobs for the resistance, attacking Roman patrols and helping out the locals. It's a very welcome change from the previous mission, as there's no Archimedes to escort around. And because the game's plot can't help itself, we launch a raid on Sejanus' mansion to activate the Eye of Apollo, a sun energy lightning weapon that will help end the Roman occupation. Again, this is 300 BC, so we might as well introduce the Inferni, flamethrower enemies who explode when they die. We fight our way up the tower, then use the lightning gun to shoot down Sejanus, who's riding an undead dragon.
Abandon reason! No, only war!
Once the dragon's dead, we face Sejanus properly. Before the fight, he kills Pollux and turns him into a zombie, and Castor, his brother, has to fight him while Electra and the Spartan take on Sejanus. He's a bit of a pain, but it's mostly straightforward. Avoid his big arrow attack, and don't try to punish him too much, or you'll hit his shield and take damage.
Pollux!
He's dead, Castor.
With Pollux dead and Castor out for revenge, the next level takes place in the Alps where the Spartan army raids a huge Roman fort. This is where the game goes back to doing what it does best. Big battlefield, clear objectives, loads of enemies, and you're just pushing forward to capture sections of the fort and then open up the way for your allies. We also meet Sejanus again, who's been brought back to life by these annoying priestesses you have to battle in their weird dream worlds. You get the sense the devs were wondering just what else they could chuck in before we reached Rome. Eventually, we kill them and then kill Sejanus for good. Probably. And then it's off to Rome. Well, Rome Sur, I mean. The second last level's a bit of a blur, and I don't mean that in a mysterious, atmospheric way. By this point, the repetition of the combat's really starting to show. The variety of the objectives in the past few levels masked it well, but this level's just really tedious corridors. There is at least a new enemy introduced, gladiators, and they fight the Romans as well, which keeps the faction chaos idea alive, but it's still not the game at its strongest. And I can't believe I'm saying that about a level that ends with the Minotaur, who's somehow loose in the sewers of Rome. Escaping the sewers has the Spartan come out at the Colosseum, which Castor and Electra have bombed. We fight our way in, get to slaughter everyone in the middle of the Colosseum, and then come face to face with the Emperor Tiberius, who kills himself the moment you confront him. Very anticlimactic. Dude just opts out of his own boss fight. The real villain is Ares, god of war, who set the whole game in motion. He wants to kill you because you're the son of Aphrodite's handmaiden who told the gods about Ares' affair with Aphrodite. So, to be clear, the whole game happens because Ares got caught shagging. He's not really that tough a boss fight. The real challenge is avoiding him resurrecting an Inferni and getting blown up. And the game ends abruptly with you killing Ares. Castor becomes the new king of Sparta and declares the Spartan a warrior, a hero, a legend. So the question is Spartan Total Warrior a forgotten masterpiece? No, absolutely not. It's clunky, it's repetitive, and some unforgiving sections make it a bit of a chore by the end. Archimedes should be banned from public life. But I don't think a game has to be a masterpiece to be worth remembering. What makes this game interesting is that Creative Assembly took its greatest strength, scale, and translated it into a completely different genre. It's hard to imagine a studio making such a strange pivot now, and with the same level of confidence, but the mid-2000s let Creative Assembly do exactly that. Not perfectly, and not always elegantly, but with enough confidence that it still works. Even though the illusion's a bit obvious now, with battles held together by clever staging and background chaos, and the player being too busy to really look closely, Spartan Total Warrior still manages to sell it. It gives you the vibes of a huge historic battle, and sometimes vibes are enough. It is not Total War on console, but it is absolutely a Creative Assembly game in spirit. A game going all in on making battles feel bigger than just the player. 8-year-old me thought it was incredible, and almost 30-year-old me had just as much fun. Cheers for watching, and thanks again to the lovely people who support me on Ko-fi and help me make fun videos like this. I'll see you in the next one.